Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So today, as we continue our coverage, it has become apparent that Ukrainian forces have decided not to continue further south at this point. The information that we have is that the Ukrainian command in the Zaporizhia sector are very concerned about the issue of the deepening of the this tactical bridgehead, as they call it, that has been created just south of Orkiv. Again, the problem for the Ukrainians is that this quote-unquote tactical bridgehead is not increasing in width. And at this point, they feel like they could be falling into a Russian-designed ploy to put a significant amount of Ukrainian units into a very large kill box of Russian artillery, Russian fixed-wing attack aircraft, and drone strikes. It appears the Ukrainians are now going to attempt to elongate this salient that has been created, or this tactical bridgehead, this salient. Now, we have received conflicting reports on the actual success in terms of breaking through the very first main Russian defensive line. We've received reports that some Ukrainian units have indeed started to clear some of these defensive obstacles. Now, the problem is that they become attacked very quickly by Russian assets. So it's very difficult for the Ukrainians, especially in this area, in this northeastern quadrant, where we suspect the Ukrainians are trying to work on this main defensive belt here in the kind of the southeastern quadrant of the salient, or the Ukrainian tactical bridgehead. Specific units involved, again, are the 14th Operational Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard, the 47th Mechanized Brigade. We believe many of these units have been since withdrawn because of heavy casualties. Elements of the 78th Special Operations and Air Assault Forces, the Ukrainian Airborne Forces. The Skala Assault Battalion is seeing quite a bit of action on the right flank, or the western edges of the southwestern edges of this salient. But again, the problem is the Russians continue to use glide bombs. They continue to use lots of artillery. They continue to use drones, attack helicopters to pound these Ukrainian units. And right now, the salient does not appear to be widening. There's been talk that, in fact, some Ukrainian units could start to withdraw from this area because of the amount of Russian units that have been dedicated to this area of the offensive. Again, as we watch this, we have essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 Ukrainian brigades. If you include the 78th Regiment and this independent assault battalion, again, about 5 brigades have been committed to this salient here. Now, if we look at the Russian forces that have been dedicated to this area, it is significant. And we believe at this point, the Russians outnumber the Ukrainians that are trying to attack into this salient. And that's obviously a concern for the Ukrainians, because traditionally you're going to need a 3-to-1 ratio to go on the offensive. I mean, that's the common number that has been thrown around. In modern war, I don't think you can completely go by that number. Now, again, as I've talked about many times, the big issue for the Ukrainians is air power. Russian air power continues to hammer the Ukrainian units in this salient, and it's happening daily. Furthermore, you have a wide assortment of Russian units that have been deployed both to prevent further southern advances by Ukrainian forces, but also prevent Ukrainian forces from widening both east and west the salient, which is the Ukrainian High Command has now come to the conclusion that is what they have to do. And unfortunately, they may not be able to do it given the amount of Russian forces and, again, Russian air power that is currently deployed in this area. Again, if we look from the western side, that's preventing the elongating or the widening of this salient. You have a host of Russian units, the 503rd Motorized Rifle Regiment. You have elements of the Russian National Guard, and these are some fairly high-quality units for the Russian National Guard as well. You hear the term National Guard, and a lot of Western viewers think of like the United States National Guard. This is not what these are. These are full-time, active-duty, professional forces that the Russians have committed to these operations. The 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, another high-quality unit. 291st Guards Motorized Rifle Regiment. To the eastern sector, you've got the 22nd Separate Special Purpose Brigade. That's a Spetsnaz brigade of the Russian GRU, another high-quality unit. And then supporting that is the 108th Airborne Assault Regiment, the 56th Air Assault Regiment, the 100th Separate Reconnaissance Battalion. And again, these are the forces preventing the widening of this Ukrainian salient. So incredibly tough road to hoe for the Ukrainians. And in the south, you have a combination of units, including the 76 Guards Airborne Division, which have been deployed to this area. But you have other regular units, such as the 201st Motorized Rifle Regiment, the 71st Guards Motorized Rifle Regiment. And again, these units are preventing the Ukrainians from pressing further south, which does not at this point appear to be the objective of the Ukrainians. I think the Ukrainians were considering a Thunder Run style maneuver or push south towards Tokmak, but ultimately that could lead to the situation where the Russians could counterattack, especially on the eastern and western flanks. They could cut off whatever Ukrainian brigades that are trapped in this salient and end up destroying a very large pocket of Ukrainian forces. And we know the Ukrainians have committed a number of reserve brigades to this operation. So this is really the last vestige of a offensive operation for Ukrainian forces in this push south of Orikhiv. We are continuing to watch operations near Bakhmut as well. Again, that has kind of gone on the back burner. It doesn't appear the Ukrainians are going to be able to retake Bakhmut. We are continuing to see Russian reserve units, to include not just reserve units, but other units such as the 132nd Guards Airborne Regiment of the 106 Guards Airborne Division, the 217th Airborne Regiment of the 98th Airborne Division, the 80th Guards Tank Regiment, which is part of another larger division. Again, Russian National Guard elements are in this area again. More 83rd Separate Guards Air Assault Brigade. So the areas in which the Ukrainians want to try and press offensive operation or counter-offensive operations, the Russians are patching those areas up with these very well-trained, very well-motivated Russian airborne units, which are very much active near Bakhmut, and they are also active in the south along the frontal area near Orikhiv as well. We're continuing to monitor the Russian buildup near Kupiansk. Is that going to result in a very large Russian offensive operation in this area? We don't know, but we do know the Russians are accumulating and continuing to accumulate forces in this area. I think at this point, the Russians want to stop the Ukrainians or bleed the Ukrainians, especially near Orikhiv. They're having success in that area, and the Ukrainians continue to pile on units to that salient, which at the end of the day may cost them much more than in terms of what it's going to actually benefit the Ukrainian forces. At the end of the day, if the Ukrainians lose large amounts of Western donated equipment, Leopard 2s, Bradley, Strykers, Martyrs, what have you, and they don't achieve any tactical or strategic victory, especially the desired seizure of at least Tokmak, what happens next? Again, the Russians are continuing to mobilize. They are continuing to expand their armed forces. They are continuing to expand the ground forces, while at the same time, production is ramping up, both in terms of strategic weapons, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, Iskanders, but the Russians are also starting to produce more and more main battle tanks and continuing to expand its armed forces. So that's kind of where we set for today. We're watching things again very, very closely. As always, thanks for joining us today. We'll have more to come very, very soon. And as always, have a good day.